Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 8 Part 21 based on novel. So let's start. That ripple was minute and was extremely sudden. However, since the ripple had originated from within Lindorm's body, he was instantly able to detect it. This also caused his pupils to show signs of tightly contracting. It was because this ripple was emitted by the mysterious stone talisman. Furthermore, this ripple was somewhat strange. To be precise, it was a clearly and obvious response to something. This was the first time something like this had ever occurred since the mysterious stone talisman had come into Lindorm's possession. Why does the mysterious stone talisman respond to the Great Desolate Tablet? Lindorm frowned as he muttered to himself. He lifted his gaze and let it rest on the vast and majestic tablet. The surface of the tablet had gradually turned yellowish due to the passage of time. Furthermore, the surface was not completely bright and clean, and there were quite a few potholes, while a few minute cracks spread out on its surface like an insect. However, this was not a big problem for the gigantic tablet. Lindorm's gaze carefully swept past every inch the stone tablet. After several minutes, his eyes suddenly focused as he looked towards a particular spot on the stone tablet. On the rough surface of the stone tablet were some faint small black dots that was extremely hard to be discovered by eye. When Lindorm's eyes landed on those black dots, he suddenly felt the mysterious stone talisman within him started to shake as it emitted wave after wave of fluctuation. A glint of bewilderment flashed deep within Lindorm's eyes as his gaze swept all around. He discovered that the number of small black dots on the surface of the stone tablet was not small. However, due to the enormous size of the stone tablet, coupled with the passing of time, leaving another 6 small black dots seemed to be nothing but ordinary. If not for the mysterious stone talisman within his body, even Lindorm would have ignored these little black dots that seemed totally ordinary. Lindorm stared at the little black dots and hesitated for a moment. Finally, he took a step forward, raised a finger and touched one of the little black dots. Lindorm, Jianghao and the other 3 were extremely close to the stone tablet. Previously, Jianghao and the rest were paying extreme attention as they stared at the stone tablet and had also reached out and touched the surface with their hands. Therefore, the people around were not too surprised at Lindorm's action. And just as the surrounding gazes moved away from him, Lindorm's finger lightly descended on the little black dot on the surface of the tablet. At the moment of contact, Lindorm's complexion rapidly changed. At the point of contact, a trace of fluctuation was transmitted into Lindorm's body. That fluctuation was ice-cold without any hint of vitality. Gradually, it brought along a mysterious evil influence that could seemingly erase the myriad of living organisms from the world. Lindorm's finger had only brushed past the little black dot for an instant before drawing back. After pulling his finger back, his face whitened as he stared in shock at the little black dots. That fluctuation was extremely bone-chilling and mysterious without any trace of vitality within it. Although Lindorm knew that when one managed to reach the mysterious death stage, one's body would produce extremely destructive death chi, the sensation from those black dots were inherently different. Furthermore, the most important matter was that this was not the first time that Lindorm had seen such a sinister and evil thing. This kind of bone-chillingly evil feeling would blot the skies. And every living thing within the world would seemingly be killed and destroyed wherever it passed. Lindorm pursed his lips and thought about his time in the ancient sect. The previous owner of the devouring ancestral symbol had seemingly perished due to some unknown sinister and dark thing. Lindorm had felt the same kind of fluctuation from the surface of the Great Desolate Tablet today. What did this mean? What exactly is this thing? Lindorm muttered to himself in a low voice. Even something as strong as that ancient sect or someone as strong as that black-eyed old man who had the devouring ancestral symbol had difficulty in resisting that unknown black thing. What exacting was it? While Lindorm was pondering about this before the stone tablet, Jianghao and the other 3 had already prepared to proceed on as they sat on a green rocks in from the stone tablet with solemn expressions. Lindorm. Wu Dao gave a shout, which finally managed to wake Lindorm from his absent-minded state. After taking a deep look at the stone tablet in front of him, he retreated to the green rock and proceeded to sit down. Upon seeing the 5 take their seats, Wu Dao gave a faint nod before waving his sleeve. Desolate force that blotted the sky surged out of his body before turning into a beam and descending onto the surface of the Great Desolate Tablet. Following the descent of the gigantic beam of desolate force, the tablet immediately started to send out minute vibrations. Ray after ray of dusky yellow light started to shoot out from the body of the tablet, before completely enveloping Lin Dong and the other four. The instant Lin Dong was enveloped by the light, his body suddenly trembled as he felt an irresistible attractive force erupting from the surface of the tablet. In the next instant, his consciousness started to grow blurry as his vision rapidly turned to darkness. Innumerable gazes gathered on the 5 human figures that are enveloped by pillars of light. From the looks of it, it seemed that the process towards the comprehension of the Great Desolate Tablet had already begun. Big Sis, what exactly will one encounter when comprehending the Great Desolation Scripture? Yin Huan was wide-eyed as she gazed at the 5 unmoving figures within the pillars of light. She could not help but ask Yin Huan as she seemed to be the only one here who had experienced it. After her question appeared, Jing Yi and the rest turned their heads and stared at Ying Xiaoxiao. It was obvious that they were interested in this question. Ying Xiaoxiao frowned a little. She looked absent-mindedly at the gigantic stone tablet, before replying in a soft voice, "The Great Desolate Tablet is extremely powerful." "Yes, I know. Our Dao sect elders had combined their efforts many times but were unable to move the Great Desolate Tablet or control when it opens. They can only assist it with the power of the Pill River every once in a while." Ying Huan continuously nodded her head in agreement. When comprehending the Great Desolate Tablet, one would be sucked into the space within the tablet, in there is a boundless and desolate land. It has no end and no signs of life, only desolation, let alone any inkling of the Great Desolation Scripture. It should be some type of test, right? Did Senior Sister Xiao manage to understand anything? Qing Yi asked thoughtfully. Ying Xiao shot a look at him. This made Qing Yi understand as he resentfully laughed for a while. If Ying Xiao had managed to pass, she would not have failed in the comprehension. "After I entered, I did not walk at all and just sat there for a very long time," replied Ying Xiao in a soft voice. "Coping with ever-changing chaos by being as steady as a rock," praised Mu Li from the flood hall. He was not trying to flatter anyone. Compared to walking around in confusion and wasting energy, it would be much better to calm one's heart and start to ponder on how to overcome such a trial. However, it was regretful that I was still unable to overcome that trial. "Perhaps I'm unable to comprehend the true essence of desolation," exclaimed Ying Xiao with a voice brimming with regret. "If it was so easy to overcome it, the Great Desolate Tablet would not have attracted that much attention." Mu Li gave a smile before turning his gaze towards the 5 figures in front of the stone tablet and said, "I wonder if the 5 of them will be able to attain anything this time. I'm also looking forward to it." Ying Xiao said while slowly nodding her head. Her eyes shifted slightly as she shot an extra glance at the youthful figure on the furthest left, Lin Dong. "What is this damned place?" The sky was filled with a dusky grey color without any cracks. It was as if poison had yet to completely separate from the sky when this space was born. Under the dusky skies was a boundless and desolate land as far as one's eyes could see. The ground was present in a dusky yellow color with an occasional appearance of dried grass. However, there was no life here. Just a few cracks that spread out on the ground and extended past one's line of sight into the distance. Currently, there was a human figure on the boundless land without any ends looking helplessly at this scene as he sighed at the heavens. The human figure was naturally the Lin Dong that had entered the Great Desolate Tablet. He stared at this seemingly ancient and endless land with an unconcealable bitter smile on his face. This should be the Great Desolate Tablet's trial. Lin Dong raised his head as he scanned his surroundings. After a single look, he saw that the extreme limits of his sight were still the same repetitive desolate land. His tiny and insignificant body stood up in this boundless land. This kind of desolation could seemingly turn people into soil to be buried here forever. It made one feel as if one was unable to breathe. Lin Dong exhaled deeply as his eyes gradually hardened. Since he had already arrived, he should see exactly what the Great Desolate Tablet wanted to do. "Let's go," Lin Dong said while grinning. This was his choice, which was completely different from Ying Xiaoxiao's. He did not like the idea of painfully sitting down quietly. Even if it might be possible that he was only wasting energy, he wanted to personally give it a try. The young man trekked forward on this boundless land. The look in his eyes was one that wanted to crack open the desolation within this stretch land. However, maybe even Ling Dong himself was unable to imagine that this walk of his would last for an entire month. A pair of feet wearily trudged on the dried, cracked and dusky yellow ground. A few clouds of dust rose along with his movements, and it felt as if even the dust itself did not have the slightly bit of energy. Lin Dong raised his head and stared numbly at the unending barren land around him. His originally keen and acute gaze unexpectedly turned somewhat blank at this point in time. He had already been traveling for a month. After a month, all he saw was the same unending barren land. A dark and gloomy yellow seemed to bob up and down as it continuously reflected in his pupils. It seemed that even the color of his pupils was being changed due to this endless barren land. After walking for a month, Lin Dong's skin had already turned withered and tinged with yellow. His black hair had also dried up and turned yellow. If one were to see him from far, he would look just like a terminally ill person. Lin Dong licked his dry, rough and pale lips, before stretching out his hands. His originally slender hands had turned abnormally rough. Soon after, he slowly clenched his fists. The abundant and vigorous energy they once held had already faded away. This barren land was absorbing his energy. Lin Dong could feel that as he was traveling across this domain, his energy was slowly fading bit by bit. He had previously attempted to quietly sit down in order to defend himself against this erosion. However, it was of no avail. Lin Dong knew that once his energy had completely dissipated, he would have failed the trial. As for the Great Desolation mysterious scripture, that was simply out of the question. As expected, this is not simple at all. Lin Dong murmured to himself while bitterly laughing. He looked down at a stalk of withered grass below his feet, which still had a withered flower attached to it. Bending down to pick it up, he touched it with his finger, causing the flower to transform into dust and scatter away with the wind. However, it would be too embarrassing to give up now. A somewhat ugly arc appeared from the corners of Lin Dong's mouth. After a while he spat out a mouthful of air before dragging his seemingly lead-filled feet as he continued his slow walk forward. As Lin Dong continued to trudge on, at another spot in this endless barren land, stood a muscular and sturdy figure. Swaying to and fro, he finally collapsed powerlessly with a loud thud. His entire body had withered, however, no fresh blood flowed out. Specks of light emerged from within his body as his body continued to disappear. As the specks of light started to rise from between his eyes, an unwilling and deeply tired expression filled Jiang Hao's cracked face. On the surrounding ground were a few cracks. Obviously, these cracks were forcefully created by him. However, in this strange place, it was obvious that using force alone was not going to solve the problem. "I've failed," Jiang Hao muttered to himself as his vision started to turn blurry. After a while, his body finally turned completely into specks of light and disappeared from this boundless barren land. Following his disappearance, the land turned even more deathly still, as a dark and gloomy atmosphere filled the area, as if the land had died. 1 month within the Great Desolate Tablet was equivalent to 1 month outside. Although 1 month had passed, the skies and forests surrounding the Great Desolate Tablet were still filled with a large crowd of people. This crowd apparently did not disperse even as time passed. On the contrary, as time continued to pass, even more senior direct disciples arrived after hearing the news. Currently, the entire spectacle was quite majestic and vast. At this moment, every pair of eyes from the surrounding mountains and forests were locked onto the 5 glowing pillars of light in front of the Great Desolate Tablet. Within the 5 pillars of light sat 5 cross-legged figures. They were as still as monks in meditation. Hovering in the sky, Chen Zhen, Wu Dao and the rest all had solemn expressions. During the past 1 month, they did not move as well and continued to observe the 5 as well as the Great Desolate Tablet. A faint buzzing noise suddenly rang out within the quiet mountain range. Immediately, everyone's attention turned to focus on one of the light pillars in front of the Great Desolate Tablet. The pillar of light gradually dimmed. Jiang Hao has failed, said Ying Xiaoxiao in a low voice, while quietly clenching her slim and tender lily-white hands after seeing this scene. Upon hearing her words, there were a slight change in Ying Huanhuan and Qing Yi's expressions. Only at this moment did they finally realize the dreadfulness of the Great Desolate Tablet. Under the attentive gazes of countless people, the pillar of light started to rapidly weaken before completely dissipating with a cracking sound. After losing the light pillar, Jiang Hao's body fell, back facing the ground, his face as white as sheet. Chen Zhen gave a soft sigh before waving of his sleeve. A gentle wave of energy descended down towards Jiang Hao and supported him, before some desolate hall disciples rapidly came forward to help him. They were able to endure for 1 month. That is already quite decent, said Wu Dao after remaining silent for a while. Chen Zhen laughed bitterly, before nodding his head and saying softly, "Let's wait and see." As they were talking, Chen Zhen's eyes could not help but shoot a worried look at Lin Dong's body. With his shrewd and ruthless eyesight, he could tell that Lin Dong was not in good shape. However, at this moment, there was no way for anyone to help him. Within the Great Desolate Tablet, one could only rely on oneself. Under the anticipation of innumerable people, time continued to pass quietly. Unknowingly, another half a month had passed. During this half-month, Chen Zhen, Wu Dao, and the rest's expression had grown increasingly tense. From time to time, their actions revealed some impatience. It was obvious that their hearts were not tranquil and calm. That was because Fang Yun and Song Ju had also failed after Jiang Hao. Furthermore, most importantly, Pang Tong's light pillar, the disciple with the most experience in Desolate Hall, had started to dim. It was obvious that he was about to fail too. Within a short half a month, 4 out of the 5 senior direct disciples in Desolate Hall had already failed miserably. Crack! The pillar of light around Pang Tong's body finally dissipated completely. A disciple was already prepared as he immediately rushed over and carefully supported his body. Looking at Pang Tong's deathly pale face, feelings of dread inevitably surfaced within his heart. The Great Desolate Tablet was truly dreadful, even the most talented Desolate Hall direct disciples had failed one after another. After Pang Tong was carried away, the originally peaceful and quiet atmosphere started to turn sad and depressive. It felt as if the air had solidified. "Only Lin Dong is left," said Ying Xiaoxiao with a soft sigh. Ying Huanhuan gently nodded her head as she bit her red lips. Her fine and slender hands were already twisted together, causing a dark green color to appear on her originally semi-transparent jade-like skin. 2 figures were standing at a mountain peak some distance away from the Great Desolate Tablet. Both of their gazes shot through space and looked at the area where the vast crowd were waiting. "Lin Dong doesn't seem to be in good shape," said the blue-robed old man who was standing beside Ying Xuanzi. "He might be able to endure 5 more days." Ying Xuanzi said with a soft voice before giving a helpless sigh. Were they all going to fall again this time? After 5 days, it was still the same. On the 5th day, when the scorching sun was rising towards the center of the sky, a pale white color suddenly appeared on Chen Zhen, Wu Dao, and the rest's faces, while an uproar started to rapidly spread across the vast crowd. This was because the pillar of light enveloping Lin Dong had started to dim. From their previous experience, this was clearly an omen of impending failure. Ying Huanhuan's jade-like hand started to clench tightly, before she tightly gripped Ying Xiaoxiao's wrists and her big eyes started to turn red. Although she was extremely confident in that fellow's resilience, she knew that this setback was not something that Lin Dong could easily disregard. She could already imagine his forced smile in the near future. "Big sis." Ying Xiaoxiao looked at the young lady beside her, who could not bear to see Lin Dong fail, before she sighed and shook her head. This matter, perhaps this was how it would end. Under the regretful gazes of innumerable people, Lin Dong's pillar of light slowly started to grow dimmer. Bang! As an uproar was stirred in the outside world due to the weakening of the pillar of light. Lin Dong's body finally collapsed heavily onto the ground in the endless barren land. A painful sensation spread across his entire body. Right now, Lin Dong's skin was thoroughly cracked and he looked extremely hideous. Furthermore, the energy within his body had disappeared completely. There were even specks of light floating out of his body from time to time. Lin Dong's mouth was shaking as he fuzzily stared at a stalk of withered grass in front of him. He knew that he was already at the end of his limits and did not have the energy to continue walking forward. He stared at that stalk of withered grass for a while, before reaching out with his hand and inserting it into the withered and yellow ground. He proceeded to grab the whole withered plant including its roots. When the withered plant left the ground, Lin Dong stared at the roots that were hidden beneath the surface. Reaching his finger out to touch it, the entire plant and even its roots completely turned to dust and floated away. The dust floated and scattered in front of Lin Dong's face. His face turned gloomy with uncertainty as he stayed in this way for close to half an hour. The only thing he heard was his hoarse voice which rang across the silent domain. The desolate spirit shouldn't be like this. Lin Dong slowly raised his head and looked towards the grey and dusky sky. From its color, it was as if even the sky had died. Looking once again at this piece of land, although there were withered grass around, all of them were dead. However, desolation was not like this. After desolation, life would stay hidden, waiting for the time to bloom. After desolation, there would also be an abundance of life. However, in this land, even the sky and earth were dead. Lin Dong lowered his head and suddenly extended his hands to dig the ground in front of him, causing dry dust and sand to fly into the air. Although he had hardly any strength left, by relying on sheer willpower, he was able to brandish his palms mechanically. Another lump of dull yellow dust was clawed up from the ground by Lin Dong. The dust scattered before his eyes. Yet, in that moment, his pupils had shrunk into the size of a needle as he scanned the dust. Within the dust, he had seen a floating black dot. This black dot gave him the same feeling as the black dot on the surface of the tablet. It felt mysterious and sinister and seemed capable of swallowing all life from the heavens and earth. Without even blinking, Lin Dong's gaze followed the black dot as it fell to the ground before disappearing. Immediately following its disappearance, Lin Dong turned as still as a statue, and he did not even move a single inch. Specks of light started to scatter from within Lin Dong's body. Half of his body had already turned to light and scattered away. However, as his body was scattering, a fierce glint suddenly reappeared in his blank and dead eyes. Taking in a deep breath of air, Lin Dong lifted his head and stared at the endless stretch of land. Although there was no one here, an extremely earnest expression appeared on his face. Soon after, a youthful voice consisting of a single chain of words started to ring out. "Return my strength to me. Great desolate tablet, you are sick, you must be treated." Upon the vast and seemingly endless wasteland, Lin Dong spoke in an earnest yet strange and flat voice, which slowly rang out and echoed across the area. However, when his voice faded, the area remained deathly quiet. Nothing out of the ordinary had happened. Yet, this scene did not cause Lin Dong to panic at all. His eyes were tightly fixed onto this spacious land, as if someone was here who could understand his words. As Lin Dong spoke, more and more specks of light emerged from within his body. Then his legs faded amongst the lights, followed by his waist, then his chest. The specks of light slowly spread outwards, but the sharpness within Lin Dong's pupils only grew fiercer and more powerful. "You once gave Senior Ju Tong and them a chance, why not try again?" Lin Dong's voice gradually became calmer as he spoke faintly while continuing to stare at this lifeless land. The specks of light slowly spread, and started to go beyond Lin Dong's neck. "Those things, they cause you a lot of pain, don't they?" Lin Dong glanced slightly at the spreading light. His lips formed a mocking smile as he spoke. The wriggling lights finally froze at this moment. Seeing this turn of events, the smile on his lips gradually widened. This time, he had finally won the bet. The great desolate tablet did indeed possess an intelligent consciousness. Unknowingly, a gentle breeze blew across the barren land, causing waves to emerge. These waves came from all directions, and finally converged with Lin Dong at their center. Veins of light spread as Lin Dong's disappearing body started recovering at an unimaginable speed. Furthermore, as his body was recovering, his abundant energy also returned once again. "Thanks." Lin Dong clenched his fist and smiled as he felt the return of his vigorous energy. He lifted his head and clasped his hands together towards the land as he laughed. As Lin Dong's voice faded, cracks started to appear on the barren land. The cracks formed a twisted pattern like a distorted image, while Lindong stood on the now crumbling land. However, even in the face of this rapid change, there were no signs of panic on Lindong's face. Instead, a faint trace of delight could be found deep within his eyes. I guess this can be considered a breakthrough. The land finally completely fell apart as darkness gushed over from all directions and drowned Lindong's body within it. While time briefly stood still, the atmosphere in the Dao Sect mountain range had grown extremely explosive. A kind of explosiveness that could stem only from the lone figure in front of the Great Desolate Tablet. At this moment, the light pillar that had shot down from the Great Desolate Tablet and enveloped Lindong's body was shrinking at a slow but perceptible rate. Before this scene, unconcealable disappointment appeared on everyone's faces. If even Lindong failed, no other person would be able to comprehend the Great Desolation scripture of the Desolate Hall. If so, then who knew when the legendary Great Desolation scripture would ever get to see the light of day again? In the sky, a look of agony appeared on Chen Zhen and Wu Dao's faces. Although they understood that the Great Desolation scripture was not easy to comprehend, it was still rather difficult for even the likes of them to accept the scene before their eyes. Sky Hall Master Qi Lei patted Chen Zhen and Wu Dao's shoulders as if he wanted to say something. However, he could only sigh in the end, while the other Hall Masters helplessly shook their heads. The Great Desolation scripture was truly the Dao Sect's biggest pain. With all the commotion stirring all around her, Ying Huanhuan also sighed softly. She lifted her head and looked at the exceptionally lonely and skinny young figure in front of the Great Desolate Tablet. She pursed her lips, and they turned downwards in a rather sad angle. Despite her lively personality, she could also be rather fierce. Furthermore, she had even made a bet with Lindong. Yet, a young girl was after all kind-hearted. She could already feel the despair and misery that Lindong would feel after this failure. Looks like I'll have to provoke him less from now on. The young girl's eyelashes gently blinked as she thought to herself. It ended in failure after all. On a mountain peak far away, a blue-robed old man similarly sighed and could not help but bitterly laugh as he cursed, "This damned Great Desolate Tablet. In any case, our sect has protected it for 1,000 years. It's really not giving us any face. Its origins are too astonishing. It's not our place to even try and imagine what it experienced. It's normal for it not to feel indebted to us." Ying Xuanzi smiled faintly. "Seems like it's about time to end this Great Desolation Scripture Enlightenment event," the blue-robed old man replied helplessly. However, just as his voice faded, cries of surprise suddenly rang out from the great crowd in the distance. Upon hearing their cries, Ying Xuanzi and the blue-robed old man were stunned. Immediately, they raised their slightly stunned gazes to peer into the distance as their eyes abruptly focused. Dumbfounded voices slowly escaped both their mouths. The cries spread across the land at an unimaginable speed. Ying Xiaoxiao, Ying Huanhuan and the rest sensed the commotion and raised their eyes, focusing on the space before the Great Desolate Tablet. The originally shrinking light pillar had practically shrunk to the size of a palm on Lindong's head. In such a situation, many would think that enlightenment had failed and come to an end. Yet, after waiting for a few minutes, someone suddenly realized that the palm-sized light pillar had not faded. The light pillar did not completely disappear. This meant that the enlightenment was not considered over yet. "What's going on?" Ying Huanhuan said as she stared at the scene in disbelief. Ying Xiaoxiao's eyebrows knitted together. Soon after, her face gradually turned solemn, and even her voice was a little shaky as she replied, "I think this means that Lindong has not yet failed." Upon hearing this, Qing Yi and the rest were rather moved with emotion. Shock flickered deep within their eyes. Chen Zhen, Wu Dao, and the rest of the Hall Masters were likewise stunned by this scene. Immediately, a trace of wild joy surfaced within the Chen Zhen duo's eyes as if they were suddenly struck by a certain realization. The Great Desolate Tablet suddenly started to tremble intensely as waves of light gathered together on the surface of the enormous tablet. Eventually, they transformed into a near-solid light pillar that shot out and enveloped Lindong's body. As they watched the resplendently dazzling light pillar, everyone exploded into an uproar. Shock gushed up on the faces of many. Waves of light continued to gather on the Great Desolate Tablet. In the end, the surface of the tablet became like a mirror. One could faintly see a blurry yet gigantic figure looming within it. When the giant figure appeared on the surface of the tablet, the pupils of Chen Zhen, Wu Dao, and other hall masters instantly tightened as their breathing became hurried. Soon after, they looked at each other and saw the deep shock in each other's eyes. "Is that the tablet spirit?" Wu Dao asked with a coarse voice. "It should be. When I was a mere disciple, I saw Senior Ju Tong's Great Desolation Scripture Enlightenment, and this same figure appeared on the tablet." Qi Lei slowly replied. He suppressed his trembling heart and looked towards the Chen Zhen duo. "Congratulations, your desolate hall may just rise up again this time." Chen Zhen and Wu Dao looked at each other and laughed heartily till tears started to flow. After 100 years, their desolate hall had finally found a disciple that could comprehend the Great Desolation Scripture. Darkness was everywhere. When Lin Dong finally opened his eyes, the darkness once again withdrew like flood waters. As the darkness left, a barren and rocky land appeared before Lin Dong. Not far ahead of him, what first caught Lin Dong's attention was an ancient yellow tablet that stood about 10 feet tall. The tablet was similar to the Great Desolate Tablet. However, some ancient runes could faintly be seen on its surface. As Lin Dong's gaze slowly swept downwards, his pupils abruptly shrank. He saw veins of black, shadowy lines emerging from the bottom of the tablet. These lines looked like the feelers of a demon, ice-cold and wicked as they wiggled slowly while spreading on the tablet like some kind of virus. The undulations from these strange black lines were exactly the same as those tiny black dots. "These things are the culprit, right?" Lin Dong softly said as he stared at the tablet. Just as Lin Dong's voice faded, faint ripples appeared on the tablet's surface, and soon after, a blurry figure emerged. It looked at Lin Dong, as a coarse voice, so ancient that it seemed to invade one's heart, rang out. "There are indeed so many things in your body that feel familiar." At the sound of those words, the corners of Lin Dong's eyes started to twitch uncontrollably. This video will end here.